What's going on, guys? My name is Wade with TechDaily. So I've had my Samsung Galaxy A42 5G for a little while now, about 42 days, give or take. And I wouldn't be surprised if some of you kind of forgot that this phone even existed. It was one of the first new A-series phones to launch for 2021, even though it actually came out in November of last year, which was weird. And in a way, it sort of set the stage for Samsung's new mid-range devices, but rather than being maybe a refined and upgraded version of the A41, this A42 5G, in my opinion, is just an entirely different device with its own pros and cons, its own add-ons and compromises. It's a mixed bag, and having used it and compared it to similar devices, including Samsung's other already released and rumored upcoming A-series phones, I've sort of come to the conclusion that this device doesn't quite have a place in the lineup anymore. It's not really a budget device, obviously. There's like 4 or 5 other A-series phones that are a better value and a better price, and I think it has more compromises than it should when we consider what something like the A52 or A72 might offer for a bit more. I'm also not sure that it's a unique enough device to stand on its own, but in saying all that, it's still a good smartphone, and if it's available in your region, I think it's maybe worth considering. It's just a tougher sell now, a few months into the new year, with everything else available and a whole bunch more rumored and upcoming devices on the horizon. Now, to start off, depending on where in the world you're located, the A42 5G is going to retail between $300 and $350. The price has come down a bit since launch, which is kind of nice, and this device is primarily a Europe and Asia specific smartphone. It's not going to hit US stores or carriers, I don't think, but because of just where this phone is mainly sold, I think that already presents some issues when you have the likes of Xiaomi, for example, offering seemingly better phones for a similar price in those markets. Taking a look at the phone itself, I think you can tell that it's very obviously a mid-range Samsung device, but there are some important physical aspects here worth talking about. First off, size-wise, this A42 5G now comes in at 6.6 inches. And while that's certainly your sort of standard size nowadays, fans of the 6.1-inch A41 might be disappointed in this change. The A41 was totally unique in the lineup. It was compact and comfortable, being some half an inch smaller than any other A-series phone. This A42 is now just another big phone in the big phone lineup. However, while a lot of us seem to praise those smaller than average devices, I guess the sales data doesn't lie. People don't seem to be buying smaller phones as much as people seem to be talking about liking those smaller phones. So I'm sure that's what's led to this change. Up front, we also have that camera notch, a subtle chin at the bottom, and noticeable black borders all around. With an 84% screen to body ratio, what you're looking at isn't too bad, but if you want that refreshed, modern look of a camera cutout and slimmer bezels, you'll have to jump up to something higher. Around back, the A42 is the same shiny plastic material that pretty much all the Samsung A-series phones have had. It comes in any color that you want, as long as that color is black, white, or gray. And if I had the chance to do it over again, I'd probably have gone with black instead of gray, simply because while this color is a bit more unique, it got pretty boring to look at. And the black finish on the A42 just offers a shinier look, more obvious rainbow effect, and I think comes off as a nicer looking setup. Also, this phone doesn't need a case on it. This one just comes in the box, which is nice. I stuck it on here because it's a little grippier on the phone, but between the case itself and the bare phone, I don't see any marks or scratches or signs of use. It looks as good as the day it came out of the box. The sides and edges of this phone have a slight curve and taper, makes the phone feel a little thinner. They're a polished metal-like material too, also no real marks or scratches there. And all in all, in the hand, this phone looks and feels like any other mid-range Samsung device. It's a little lighter, maybe, but there's not much else to mention here. No surprises or complaints. Also, the A42 offers pretty much all the physical traits you might want. There's expandable storage on the side, even though you do get 128 gigs built in on the phone already. There's a headphone jack at the bottom, across from the usual single speaker down there. And underneath the display, a fingerprint sensor, which I found to be pretty solid and obviously very useful nowadays. It's not quite as snappy as those fancy new sensors on the S21, for example, obviously, but I think it's improved over last year's A series fingerprint sensors, and in my experience, you need just a fraction of a second on the sensor area to unlock the phone. Pair that up with Face Unlock, and one way or another, you're gonna get into this phone pretty quickly. It's better than the lower end models, for sure, but still a bit off the newer flagship biometric setups. The first major compromise, really, with this A42 actually comes with the display itself, and this is a little painful in my opinion. The screen on this phone is a Super AMOLED panel, but it comes in at a resolution of just 1600 by 720, 266 pixels per inch. Last year's A41 had a 1080 resolution Super AMOLED display at a much higher pixel density, since it was a smaller size. An all-around better display, no matter how you measure it. Not only is it a tough sell with this phone offering a worse display than last year based solely on the specs, but I think bumping the resolution down while simultaneously increasing the size makes the move even more disappointing. From your average viewing distance, the colors look great, it's bold, it's bright, it's a decent enough viewing experience, but even from like 6 or 8 inches away, you can pick out the pixels and see pretty easily that this is just not a sharp looking screen, especially with text. And for maybe a phone at $250, I can look past that. But this phone launched for more than $350. It even approached that $400 price point. And that's just too high of a price to be shipping a 720p screen, even if it is still AMOLED. I think this phone sells for a price point where potential buyers are doing their research, they're comparing these kinds of specs, and I don't think it's something you can easily look past. After all, this is what you're looking at 99% of the time when you use your phone, so it's pretty important. And this change, this downgrade, is disappointing for a phone like this, especially since something better was offered on last year's device. Now, inside, I think the A42 offers a fantastic array of specs that allow this phone to feel fast, be fully capable, and certainly compete with just about any other device at its price range. And it's these specs that probably are the selling point more than anything else for this phone. You get the fairly new Snapdragon 750 5G chipset inside, paired with the Adreno 619 GPU, and the option of either 4, 6, or 8 gigs of RAM. So you could really spec this thing out if you wanted to. The only other negative is on the software side of things. This phone doesn't yet have Android 11 or One UI 3, and it doesn't seem to be on the list of phones getting it anytime soon, but as it stands, I have received 3 or 4 minor software updates already in my time using this phone, and I've been more than happy with the performance. I have the mid-level configuration of the A42, the one with 6 gigs of RAM, and there's been nothing up to this point that this device can't handle. It's the kind of phone that can be pushed with a couple dozen apps running, all the gaming you want to do, and everything else in between. It's not that flagship powerhouse, but for this price, it's more than enough, and I don't think you're going to come across anything that this phone can't do. I haven't had a single issue with performance, minimal blips or hangups, mainly just apps that need to be relaunched after running in the background for a while. But all in all, like I said, if there were but one reason to consider this phone, I think it offers a lot of bang for your buck on the performance side of things. And actually, you can pair that up with pretty solid battery life too. The only real benefit of this phone being so much bigger than last year is the fact that we now get a 5000 milliamp battery inside. That's a bigger than average capacity for sure, and has yielded me about 14 hours of screen on time. So assuming some average everyday use, you could probably stretch this phone out for 2 full days before needing to throw it on the charger, which is great for reliability, but also great because the 15 watt max charging speeds means you'll be plugged in for well over 2 hours to get a full charge. Still, I think this is one of those phones where the specs and capabilities outweigh almost anything else. So if that's specifically what you're looking for in a device, you're definitely going to get all the right stuff from this A42. In regards to the cameras, the A42 also has a really solid hardware setup paired with all the right shooting modes and features. And given how quickly camera tech has evolved nowadays, I think this is super important in order for this phone to be competitive. Around back, you get a 48 megapixel main lens, 8 megapixel ultra wide, 5 megapixel macro, and 5 megapixel depth sensor. The selfie camera is also a respectable 20 megapixel shooter, and inside the camera app, you'll find all the features and functions you could ask for. Night mode is here, super slow-mo, you can shoot videos up to 4K resolution if you want, but the best option is probably 1080 with the extra video stabilization enabled. That's what I preferred. And the real world results here are pretty solid, all things considered. I think you'll find the usual Samsung-esque looking picture profile, saturated, colorful, bolder than real life, but still a great looking image. There's enough detail in every shot too, but shooting in the 48 megapixel mode is gonna be the better option if you want to capture every little thing you can in your shots. The macro lens is and always has been borderline useless. It takes too many tries to get a good looking up close shot, and I don't really consider it to be too useful. The wide angle, on the other hand, looks great and is obviously much more capable in everyday shooting. When the lights go down, that's mainly where the A42 struggles a bit. I think you can see some shadows getting lost and the image getting noisy and grainy, but where it lacks in low light capabilities, it makes up for in video. You get just a really smooth shot with no real focus hunting issues, plenty of detail, nothing too blown out. All in all, this is a camera setup that offers a lot. And like I said, that's critically important nowadays given how good smartphone camera setups have become. So I think you can probably tell that the A42 is kind of all over the place. It's not quite an upgrade over last year, like I said. It's just a pretty different phone, and not always in a good way. If you're buying this device for the specs and capabilities alone, you're gonna be happy, I think. But everything else, the phone size, the screen resolution, the camera setup, even the build quality, those are all forgettable attributes on a phone that likely will get forgotten in the lineup anyway. I'm not really sure who this phone is for. I'm not that confident that it offers anything more than any other $350 smartphone, and I think with the A52 and A72 on the way, those phones will far outshine this one. In the end, the A42 is about as memorable as the grayish color it came in, and that's a shame, but it's sort of the product of an ever-increasing number of mid-range devices, especially from Samsung themselves, and a super competitive market in general that continues to get better and better. So there you go. Those are my thoughts on the Samsung Galaxy A42 5G. What do you guys think about this phone? Let me know in the comments down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts, of course. Hopefully you guys did enjoy this video though. Be sure to follow TechDaily on Twitter and subscribe to the TechDaily YouTube channel if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys later.